All right, everybody, welcome to day one officially of American One. Now, the semester was already going to be 5 days shorter because they were trying to get us out before Christmas for first semester, and now it's kind of 5 days shorter than that due to the orientation week last week. So, long story short, excuse me. Um, Excuse the bell ringing. Long story short, we've only got 80 days this semester. And so generally American One now starts out with European exploration. We spent a few days kind of looking at that, but we're going to have to cut some corners in some places. And I've decided this might be one of the best places to do it. So we're going to do a quick recap. A lot of this stuff you learned in world history, or at least your teacher went over in world history. So which you remember, I'm not sure, but we're going to just do a real quick recap. All right. So first of all, back in the 1400s, people got the desire, I guess, to start exploring in Europe. And so if you remember the three G's from world history, gold, God, and glory, those are three of the big reasons. Gold, wealth, obviously, which you'll see here in number two. God, spreading a religion, which at this point, that was kind of more of a spreading your political system and went into national pride. And then the third was glory, fame, curiosity. Even though statues are getting beheaded right now, Christopher Columbus, he wanted to be famous for, exploring stuff and finding stuff. And so here's some other reasons here as well. The big reason that's going to be the initial reason for wanting to explore, and you'll see this in through these slides here, as well as in the video you watch later, is a big reason that they really started setting out in Europe, and you'll see this on the map on the next slide, is new trade routes to get foreign goods. Okay. And so down here you see the faster and cheaper trade routes as well. Because we kind of have to understand European exploration for why America was discovered by Europeans and why the different different countries were there, and why we end up why the English end up kind of winning out as opposed to the French or the Spanish. All right, so here's a map of the world. You'll see a little bit of graphic better in the video that's posted later, but we're going to look right here and see where my mouse is. Here's Europe, all right? And right down here, here's where we're going to focus on to start with. We've got Portugal and Spain. And now Europe essentially had started sailing a little bit, but for the most part, they're going over land. Now, most people don't think the world is flat at this point. Sometimes that's some confusion that people just thought the world was flat, and that's why they didn't travel anywhere. But they thought it was round. They just weren't sure how big it really was. Some people thought it was a lot bigger than it was. Some people thought it was a lot smaller than it was. Now, there were still a lot of people concerned about what the ocean held in terms of sea monsters or just different things that they were unsure of. So it was still a very mysterious place. But anyways, Europe likes to get a lot of goods from the Indies and other places in Asia like China. So silk and different types of spices. And so the best way to get there was to go over land. All right. Now, the problem was you got a lot of Islamic nations and Muslim empires that don't really like people just going through their territory. And so they would either charge them high tolls to go through their land, or sometimes it was military conflicts. It was just tough to get through there. And so Europe said, well, let's try to find a better way to get there. And so, not knowing exactly how big the world was, they said, well, let's stay close to home to start with. And so you're going to have Portugal and Spain that are really going to lead the way, all right? And so you got Prince Henry, the navigator, who is going to be the Portuguese leader that really kind of gets the ball rolling. Now, the name would imply he was a big sailor himself, but he's not. He's called Prince Henry the Navigator because he sets up a navigation school. He really puts a lot of emphasis on learning just how to sail, the best methods, developing faster ships, more efficient ships, all of that. Okay? All right, and so you're going to have these explorers, and at the least, hopefully, some of these names will sound familiar. So Lisbon, that's the capital of Portugal. You're going to have some key guys here, and so Europe is familiar with Africa, and for the most part, kind of in some ways, how big it is. And so Bartholomew Diaz, he's going to go out, and his big accomplishment is he's going to make it all the way down here to the Cape of Good Hope, and basically the bottom of Africa. All right. And so kind of see, all right, here's kind of where the end is. It starts going around, and then maybe from there we can get to the Indies. Now, Vasco da Gama says, Bartholomew, you made it all the way to the bottom of Africa. Why did you not keep going? So he's going to. All right. So da Gama, he's going to go. He's going to kind of follow, in some ways, Diaz's route, but he knows kind of roughly how long, I guess, Africa is. So he kind of goes out just a little bit more, kind of tries to test the water, see if they can see anything else from as far as he goes out, but not too far. He goes all the way down to where Diaz went. He says, I'm going to keep going. So he just kind of skirts the coast of Africa here, the eastern coast, and then just sets out, and he makes it to India. And so this now gives them access to the Indies, and then they can get into the Asian market. So here they're being able to bypass those Muslim nations that they're having to pay taxes or have to worry about fighting, instead of just going to trade. So he makes it. All right. So people are happy for the most part. But if you look here and go back to this map here, this world map, going from Portugal all the way around Africa to get to India, and then they're eventually going to see over here where the Indies are. There's going to be some people that say, that's great and all, but there's got to be a better way, right? And so Columbus says, I really think we can get there quicker if we just take out west. All right. And so Columbus sails and finally gets Spain to agree to give him some boats and go west. And now Columbus thought the world was round. He just thought it was a lot smaller than it was. And so when he hits the Caribbean over here in 1492 and 93, he thinks he's made it to the Indies. Thus, that's why he calls the people Indians. All right. Which is still the debate today. All right. And so while certain Native peoples in America are called that, most honestly have been okay with it. They are okay with the term American Indians, things like that. But anyways, that's where that term came from. You probably remember that from world history. So Christopher Columbus thinks he's found this new trade route, right? And so this is a huge step for Europe. Columbus is going to make 3 other journeys. People are starting to question that this is the Indies. Columbus is going to die thinking that he just found another route to the Indies. He's never going to accept the fact that he actually discovered new land for Europe. So we have to be careful talking about like discovering land. The land was discovered by the people that were already there, discovering it for Europe. So when we talk about the new world, the world that was new to Europe. Okay, so we all heard of Columbus and kind of what he did. Okay, and so after Columbus goes west, then people continue going there because they know that they can make it now to other landforms and island groups that they can make it there. They're not going to just starve in the middle of the ocean. All right. So Portugal and Spain then again are the front runners. England and France and Germany, they're not really too concerned right now until Portugal and Spain, who are just by and large the 2 dominant countries of exploration, they sign a treaty with each other called the Treaty of Tordesillas, where Portugal and Spain divided the New World between themselves. And so you see the line here. And the first thing you probably notice is Portugal got the bad end of that deal, right? So they're going to divide the New World between them. Now that goes to show you in a lot of ways still to Europe how little they knew was out there. Okay. Portugal would have never agreed with that line if they knew how much was there. Um, but the idea also was Portugal was going to kind of have these parts of Africa, and they would kind of have, first dibs, so to speak, as European conquest goes. And so Portugal and Spain essentially divide the world between themselves. So think about that, how that's going to kind of light a fire under the rest of Europe. Portugal and Spain, two countries, dominant in sea exploration, have now taken it upon themselves to divide the entire world that's been undiscovered and a little bit of discovery right now to themselves. And so England's going to say, we're not okay with that. France is going to say, we're not okay with that. And so other countries are going to start developing fleets and putting emphasis on technology that's going to allow them to sail because they want a piece of the pie, so to speak. All right. And so that's going to really set off this age of exploration and competition between European countries. All right. Now, really fun fact, if you don't know, most of South America and Central America speak Spanish, and this is why. All right, because Spain started in terms of colonizing this area. All right, so the one red section there is modern day Brazil. And if you didn't know, Brazil, they do not speak Spanish in Brazil. They speak Portuguese, and it all goes back to this time period. Okay, so it's kind of one of those, I think, at least, hopefully you'll appreciate as well, kind of those cool things that, like, why is this like this? Well, it goes back to history. Okay, so that's just one like kind of quick plug for why it's important to kind of learn stuff. All right, and know so we can go forward with things. All right, so when the Spanish enter into the Americas, you've got these conquistadors, and it's basically conquerors who are going to just basically expand the Spanish Empire. You're going to see more of this in some readings today. But they're going to have a lot of advantages over the Native Americans. First of all, they're going to have a lot superior weapons. Now, we're dealing with gunpowder just yet, but they do have superior weapons. They've got horses. Horses are huge in warfare up until tanks are invented. So horses are a huge advantage for being able to build speed and also just to flank the enemy. And then the big one they have that they didn't know was disease. All right, so if you ever heard of smallpox, smallpox is going to kill up to 90% of these populations. All right, and so this is going to stay true pretty much until modern times. Disease is always going to kill more people than bullets and swords do. All right, and so when different cultures come into contact with each other, sometimes they can be carrying some type of infection, bacteria, whatever it might be, that the other culture doesn't have any experience with and can decimate the population. All right, so again, smallpox is going to kill up to 90%. And this is going to go through during the days of English colonization and the conflicts that the early colonists are going to have with Native Americans. Smallpox is going to just obliterate a lot of the Native American tribes, much more than the colonists could have done, and the early Americans could have done just through like actual like armed conflict. All right, Spain is going to start something called the encomienda system, where essentially it allowed the Spanish to expand their empire by enslaving those Native Americans that were already there. Okay, they looked at conquest and expansion as their right to. They controlled the land, they controlled the people, and so the people were their subjects. We're in a time period here where if you're able to overtake a people group, then you're able to abuse them however you want as well. And so it's just brutally harsh. And now one thing, a lot of times we think of Native Americans in the sense of like the peaceful tribes or the tribes that were fighting each other sometimes, but for the most part, tribes that were trying to get along with the English colonists until there were issues over land. But remember also too, The Europeans, what they're coming into the Aztec empires and things like that, who themselves were pretty brutal as well. And so sometimes they were able to kind of see how people were treated before them, and that also had some influence there.